So, acolytes, unholy slope time. By the way, good thing. One of my commenters gave it to me. And I don't know if he meant it, or he said holy slope. I said unholy, but I don't know if he actually meant it as a fun thing, or if he, by the freaks that are actually, abominations, sorry, that are actually going around right now, maybe he meant it as an insult. I find it funny. But, just want to mention that, the backstory for that. So, let's see, by the way, why you don't matter anymore from, how money works. The guy, legend, have to do more often videos of him, but it is what it is. Let's start.
This week, the US shocked economists with a report that contained results they were not really expecting. The economy had grown at a shocking 3.8% pace in the second quarter, seemingly putting to rest all of the concerns that the naysayers had about a softening job market, trade.
That's irrelevant. If the economy grows, that doesn't mean that the normal human being that is around gets anything out of it. The economy is irrelevant. How people are treated and how much they actually get from it, that's the most important thing. So, yeah, I would say nobody cares about it. It's good to see that it grows, but if normal people don't profit from it, fuck it.
Wars, the cost of living, skyrocketing defaults, declining labor force participation, sector-wide crises, and slowing productivity. Sounds great, right? Well, as you might have already guessed, there is a lot to unpack from these numbers. GDP isn't a flawless measure, even in normal times. And I'm sure you have probably noticed there is a lot going on at the moment. But if you do what nobody else wants to do and actually read the data behind these figures, it tells three very interesting stories that challenges a lot of assumptions that we have about how our economy should work. This goes well beyond just simply growing inequality. That's not exactly shocking news anymore. But if you are looking for a sign of just how healthy and balanced the current market is, a new report has revealed that there are now more private equity firms in America than there are McDonald's. And the
Oh, that's bad. Maybe I misunderstand, but I think those are the firms that actually just go around and sell houses. If I am correct, but no matter what, if there is an overflow on something, then it's bad.
reason is very simple. If all of these numbers needed a headline, it would probably be, "You don't matter anymore." Economically speaking, of course.
GDP report showing that the U.S. economy expanded at 3.8%, surpassing the forecast growth of 3.3%.
36% of consumers say they've had trouble paying in just the last week, so that is up 25% compared to the same time period a year ago.
So you have to go to your landlord and say, "I don't know how I'm going to pay you." I've never had to do that.
Trillions of dollars are pouring into the United States for investment purposes.
The U.S. economy grew faster than expected between April and June.
So yeah, that wasn't a typo. There are now 19,000 private equity funds in the US and only 14,000 McDonald's locations. The statistic was originally highlighted by Elisa Wood, a partner at one of the biggest...
Wait, I have to look this up. This disturbs me. Was ist Privat Equity? I hope it autocorrects. Private Equity bezieht die Investition von privaten Beteiligungskapital ist nicht... Oh, what? That's even worse. What the fuck? So basically, those are firms that manage your Aktien or the amount you own in a freaking company, if I understand this correct. What the yeah, we're fucked here. We're fucked extremely hard.
Private equity firms in the world. Ironies aside though, the reason this is happening is because there is just more opportunity in serving investment products to a few thousand ultra high net worth individuals and institutions than there is in serving burgers to millions of everyday Americans. As an economic participant, you really only have 3 jobs as far as these numbers are concerned. You can work, you can invest, and you can consume. So do keep this in mind as we jump into the numbers, because there are really 3 big problems with a lot of our assumptions. The first problem is what this impressive economic growth figure is actually based on. GDP is normally calculated by summing together household consumption, investment, government spending, and exports, and then subtracting total imports.
Yeah, it is. And I think my point still stands from the beginning. This is
when the Bureau of
irrelevant.
Economic Analysis says that the economy is growing at 3.8%, they do this calculation for a quarter, compare the difference to last quarter, and then multiply it by 4 to get an annualized figure. If you are so inclined, they publish the individual breakdowns of all of these numbers, and if you did look closely at the most recent report, there is one number buried deep in the data that really puts this promising headline into perspective. In Q1 of this year, imports into America spiked by over 38% from the quarter before. This was mostly because big retailers wanted to stock up on inventory before tariffs took effect so they could remain cost competitive for a few more months.
Okay, yes, and that's why it's useless. Because who the fuck cares about it? As I said, this is just rich people stuff that nobody of the normal people understand or will in any way profit from it. And if you're one of those that actually can profit out, that has the knowledge, then yes, it's important for you. But for normal people, this is... And by the way, I may misunderstand it, because finances is a complicated theme, and I understand it in Germany a bit more than in English. So that's something that I am right now practicing basically.
But in Q2, after they had already filled all of their warehouses, they didn't need to bring in more inventory from overseas, so imports dropped by over 29%. Now remember, when the economists do their calculations, they subtract imports. So on paper, a crash in import volume is actually good for GDP numbers. In reality though, international trade swinging this wildly over 6 months in the biggest economy in the world is not great. But it gets worse. Within the same report, it is noted that this large drop in imports actually bolstered GDP by over 5%. What this means in plain English is that if we ignored the wild swings in import volumes, GDP would have actually shrunk by 1.2% at an annualized rate. Now, as a small little side note, 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, I'm sure the comments section can tell you what that's an indication of. Now, you might think a little glitch in the reporting process still shouldn't have this much of an impact on the performance of the...
No, but the thing is, even if it falls down, let's just see my logic in this entire thing. Because I had to work with companies to a certain, or sometimes as a boss that told, hey, we lost this and this much money this year. Okay, how did you make? And I'm just gonna say a random thing. Let's just say, you know what, to keep it simple, we made 101 euro this year. Now we lost something. How much did you lose? Now we only have 99 euro. What the fuck, who cares? You had a slightly worse month? That's fucking irrelevant. You won't die because of it. This isn't a crippling loss. This isn't even something that actually shows that something's wrong. It just shows you sold probably less stuff. Now if you have a spiral that goes all the time down, now we have a problem. But until then, just because the GBT sinks a bit, is irrelevant, in my opinion. As I said, this is my opinion. Maybe I am ignorant of the entire thing, but seeing this, like losing 1%, 2%, even if the number sounds high, it's just irrelevant. Because you're not spiraling down, you just lost a bit money that you could have made, and who suffers under it? Nobody. Because the fucker that takes all the money already has more than enough. Who cares?
Entire economy, right? And you would be absolutely correct. Over 2/3 of the American economy depends on just this part here. Personal consumption now accounts for 68% of all of our economic activity, well above most other advanced economies, which is clearly not ideal, but it has given us 2 pieces of false confidence. The first is that since so much of the economy relies on consumer spending, we can't let those consumers fall too far, or else there will be nobody left to sell stuff to, right? Wrong. I have mentioned this statistic before, but for those who haven't heard it, 50% of all consumer spending is now done by just the top 10% of households.
Yep.
Now, that's a scary statistic by itself, but what it doesn't mention is that the bottom 60% of households now collectively account for less than 20% of the spending, and a growing share of that is being supported by risky consumer debt. The companies that have been performing best over the last 5 years have been in industries catering to wealthy consumers or to investor hype. Ferrari is now worth twice as much as Honda, and even Walmart is changing its business model to cater to more upmarket shoppers. More than 200 million people could drastically cut their spending tomorrow, and the total drop in economic activity could be covered over by increased spending on things like AI. In fact, it's kind of already happening. Personal consumption contributed less to economic growth than data center construction in the last reported quarter, and a majority of that consumption was done by just 10% of households anyway. Steve Eisman of Big Short fame did an extended interview on this a few days ago, and it goes into depth on a lot of the specifics, so I will leave a link to that down below. But in brief, this is more than just regular old inequality. Today we have something arguably worse: indifference. The lords of old at least needed their serfs to keep their empire operating. Today, not so much. As far as the
Yep. I mean, in the Middle Ages, and I'm a bit knowledgeable on that part, people weren't as badly treated as it's always shown in the entire shows. Of course, I cannot say there were always like bad things happening, no matter what. Even things that we these days would see as unhuman that were at those days normal. But people were treated actually quite good for the most part. And yes, you can tell me that there are exceptions these days, and this is the thing that I was always afraid of. As soon as a human being loses his value in a workplace, or the workplace doesn't need human beings anymore, well, big companies will, let's just say, push you away. Simple as that.
economy is concerned, your ability to be a good little consumer is just a rounding error. And that leaves only your ability to work and your ability to invest. So it's time to learn how money works to find out why you don't matter anymore to the economy. This week's video is sponsored by Gamma, the tool that's changing the way people build presentations and content. If you haven't used it yet, Gamma makes it effortless to turn ideas into clean, professional decks without touching PowerPoint or Google Slides. Over 50 million people use it. It's basically the go-to workspace for modern presentations. They've just launched Gamma Agent, your built-in co-pilot that helps you work smarter, not just faster. Agent doesn't just format slides. It researches, rewrites, and even fact-checks your content automatically. It can pull competitor insights right inside your deck or summarize a full article into polished slides in seconds. I tried it on one of my own decks, dropped in a URL, and within seconds, it summarized the article into slides with citations already linked. I didn't have to open a single tab. It even suggested counterpoints to strengthen my argument, which saved me a ton of time prepping for a client pitch. It can also personalize a presentation for different audiences or reframe your tone, from casual to executive ready instantly. It's like having an edit.
Give me a second, I have to save this video. Gonna bit start design today, gaming for free. I'm just gonna still click his link for this entire thing. To a later. This is for later.
Editor, researcher, and designer
this is
built
a
into one tool.
SmilingLich.
You can try Gamma and see what
This
agents
SmilingLich needs money
using
thing.
the link in the description. One important detail about your relationship with the economy is that, yeah, sure, your success might not mean that much to the economy anymore, but the success of the economy also doesn't mean that much to you anymore.
Exactly. Exactly. And I hope he will say it better than I do, because I am sure I didn't explain my point that good. But exactly. Yes. It is a giving and taking.
Over the last 40 years, personal productivity has doubled, even accounting for inflation. That means the average American is now producing twice as much as they were 40 years ago. And this has given even average people access to comforts, conveniences, and experiences that they just wouldn't have had back then. And yet, when asked, slightly more than half of you that responded still said you would prefer to live back then. So we are all remembering history through rose-tinted glasses, or has this doubling of economic output actually been totally irrelevant to average people? Well, as you might have guessed, I'm
gonna say it like this. it's not that it's totally or in this case, yes, we got more luxury, but I think that a human being himself needs some adversity, something he can fight against, to do, like, maybe fight against the correct word, work against, just to grow and be happy that they, at the end of the day, have something that they actually worked for. Because how many people do you know, if they just get something, they don't give a shit about the thing? Except it's maybe something, a present from somebody you love, you know, like those emotional things. But normally, sorry about that.
Per capita production doubled, but incomes did not. Adjusted for inflation, median wages have increased by just 20% over the last 40 years, which is not great, but it's still not nothing. The median isn't skewed by the uber rich like the average is, and that's 20% after inflation, so we should theoretically be 20% better off. And we are, but only in areas that don't really matter. Travel, technology, on-demand services, clothing, furnishes, and even food are all much more accessible today than they were back then, by a pretty wide margin. However, more essential items like housing, education, and healthcare have become far more expensive. So while you can, in theory, buy more stuff today with a perfectly middle-of-the-road income, it's not exactly the stuff that you need to build a comfortable life. The things that we wanted became cheaper, but the things that we needed fell out of reach. Which means, for a lot of people, their strongest tangible connection to economic prosperity is the car they are paying off over the next 84 months. But there is one much bigger factor which is a lot harder to capture with these numbers, and it's how people have earned that money. Your consumption may not matter to the overall economy, but the overall economy hasn't made it easy to consume the things you want. But something that has lost its relevance even faster is the work we are doing. 40 years ago, most jobs garnered far more respect from both employers and employees. Most workers in skilled or semi-skilled professions stayed with their employers for a long time, and laying off staff or getting fired was a massive deal. Today, losing your job at some point is the expectation. A lot of young workers treat it almost like a joke to make content out of, although this could be some kind of brain rot coping mechanism that I don't fully understand. Anyway, modern tech—
No, it's simple. It's quite honestly because I have the exact same mindset right now. I have exactly zero pride in my work. Nothing. It's just work. Because I personally expect to do what I do, just get my experiences, and as soon as I get something better, go out. There isn't any freaking thing where I would say I am bound to the company, because the company, quite frankly, just doesn't give a shit about me. They would fire me in an instant. I am useful or useful enough so they cannot fire me easily. But if they could, if they got somebody that's, let's just say, 50 cents cheaper per hour than me, my expertise, the work that I actually done, the entire sweat and blood I invested in the entire thing is irrelevant. I'm gone. It is what it is. So, can I feel pride in this? I mean, I could, but I won't, because it's irrelevant. I don't care. I'm doing this to get something different out of it. Now, the work that I do privately, for me, that's something I take pride in. And YouTube specifically is something that I have fun with. This is not work for me, this is more of a fun thing. Although I have to reduce the videos from 2 today, sometimes to 1 a day, because there is a lot of overflow right now that, and you know, the fun thing will suffer under it for now, because, well, it is what it is. And my doggos need food. They need a lot of food. No, they don't need a lot of food. They are just, I just give them food as much as they want. Those little fuckers just deserve it.
Technologies have made a lot of jobs far more productive, but they have also made them far more user-friendly. As an example, a few decades ago, most large offices would have a small army of semi-skilled secretaries to put together presentations and information for reports. Something like making a graph in the prescribed corporate style would take a lot of time, but also take some level of training to learn. Today,
Exactly.
the company can just have an Excel template, and as long as someone can copy and paste 2 rows of data, they can do what used to be hours of work. Bank managers used to be highly respected professionals with a deep understanding of business finances, their local economy, and their extensive list of clients.
Exactly.
Replacing one of these guys could take a full year of direct
Yes.
mentoring. Today, bank managers are glorified loan salesmen because credit reports and extensive electronic databases have taken the skill out of their jobs. Travel agents, junior analysts, stockbrokers, and an array of other jobs all mostly followed the same trend. These people became far
Yes.
more productive, but also far easier to replace.
And the thing is, you would have, like, just so you realize it, acolytes, we aren't talking about the low bob jobs that everybody can do in an instant. People got replaced that actually have, like, specific skills that you needed. That, as he said, were replaceable maybe in a year. Now, a PC does it. So yes, even high-skilled jobs aren't safe from AI or anything like this. It's just nothing is safe. Nothing, literally nothing. So yeah, just saying here, not AI freaking fear-mongering, because I think it's a tool. It has to be used correctly, yada yada yada. But definitively, here.
User-friendly and standardized technologies meant most people could get up to speed with a job within a week or two, as long as they knew how to use a suite of software. The promise or threat of AI, depending on who is asking, is that it could render your ability to work completely obsolete. But even
Yes.
if it simply continues this trend of standardizing roles, it will ultimately make workers more of a commodity that could be easily traded around an open market. Again, this raises the argument that if nobody can find a job anymore, then there will be nobody left to buy all of the stuff that companies are making. But
Exactly.
what's more, this is simply not true. Profit-motivated companies aren't going to hand over their valuable resources for nothing in return. For normal people, what they typically exchange for those goods and services is the hours in their day through something like a job, a contract, or maybe even working in their own business. But if these working hours are no longer valued by the market, then over time, companies are just going to start selling their products to people who can get their money through their investments, kind of like what is happening right now. In some tragic irony, this trend has gone so far that even multimillionaires are being pushed out of coveted goods and services by billionaires with more purchasing power.
I appreciate that, because people don't think about the millionaires, right? Like, we get lumped in with the billionaires, but the millionaires really have it rough. Why are you guys saying f you?
Alright, so your consumption and your labor might not matter to the
Yeah, fuck Ludwig for that one. I just... if you're a millionaire and you think you struggle, you're fucked in the head. You just don't. Yes, you put in probably more work into it. Or you, at one point you did, maybe. But the financial, like, if you just fall out of the thing that, like, you have to take care of financial things, this is a gigantic stress spike that you just don't have to take care anymore. You have more time. You just don't have to think about something that's essential to survival, basically. So, yeah, it's just, no, you don't have it hard. And I am actually one of the people that will see millionaires as human beings, but millionaires have to realize one thing. You have it good. You have it extremely good. And don't pretend that you're like someone of us that's down there in the mud and fighting. You're just not. And I mean, I don't even see me as somebody who struggles particularly hard or a lot. I worked for it. But if somebody tells me, hey, I have this and this problem, I actually try to say, yeah, in the past I did the same thing and did this and this and this. But I won't say them now I'm struggling. No, I'm going to say I have a lot of stress right now. An overflow of that because, well, simply it's a time for it. But do I have it bad or hard? No.
economy. But what about your ability to invest? It sounds like things are pretty sweet for those guys, right? Well, yes, except for the fact that investments into productive capital, like all of the technology that's making you really easy to replace, is even more consolidated than consumption and income. Increased high-interest consumer debt also makes a lot of investing done by everybody else counterproductive. According to data from the Fed, the top 10% of households own more than 93% of corporate equities in America, but those same households only account for 5.4% of non-mortgage consumer debt. It's great that more people are getting into the market, but if you are paying off a 20% APR car loan and putting $500 a month into Robinhood, you are not an investor. You are just really bad at allocating capital. Now, what all of this means is that most economic participants don't really participate in their own economy. In the past, when average people struggled, the economy struggled, and wealthy people riding on that economy struggled too. Today, we could very well be in a situation where the majority make up such an insignificant share of market activity that even severe problems for them can be effectively drowned out by the party being had by a very small handful of people. Now, as far as social cohesion is concerned, this isn't great. But for the economy, it gets worse. We could see a situation where unemployment rises dramatically, but the economy continues to grow, because all of those laid off people didn't contribute much to overall consumption or investment. In that case, taking action like lowering interest rates or giving out stimulus to help the unemployed would risk further inflating already overinflated asset markets that didn't feel the pain to begin with, which would only make this problem even worse. Even the Fed essentially admitted that it was increasingly hard to enact policy that would help ordinary workers without helping out wealthy asset owners.
Exactly, yes. That's something that a lot of rich people actually try to push, that they also benefit from certain things that they, in my opinion, shouldn't benefit, because if you have a few million, you just don't need the extra money for fucking, like, I understand that, yes, it's fair is fair, quote unquote, but if you just don't need the money, for what? For what? So you can, I think, paint your yacht a different color or something like that. It's just irrelevant for you.
Even more. But it gets worse. Average people might not have that much skin in the stock market game, but the 10% that are doing all of the spending do. The reason they are spending so much in keeping entire industries alive is because they feel wealthy thanks to their booming portfolios. If these asset markets falter, there is not going to be much left to prop everything up, and to use a technical term, we are going to be absolutely fucked. Now, this is normally the point where I would say to put away the tinfoil hats, because this is all the result of broken incentive structures and flaccid regulations, rather than some kind of deeper conspiracy. But the reality is, this all sounds very familiar. In 2006, a series of reports were leaked from Citigroup's asset management team dealing specifically with ultra-high net worth clients. In these reports, they described a plutonymy, a combination of plutocracy and economy where economic growth is powered by and largely consumed by a wealthy few. In a plutonymy, there is no such animal as the US consumer or the UK consumer, or indeed the Russian consumer. There are rich consumers, few in number, but disproportionate in the gigantic income and consumption they take. The rest are the non-rich, the multitudinous many, but only accounting for surprisingly small bites of the national pie. Now, the actual intention of this report was to encourage Citigroup's wealthy clientele to invest in companies that catered exclusively to other wealthy clientele, because the analysts predicted that they would eventually be the only ones worth selling stuff to. And remember, this report was published way back in 2005. Now, Citi has tried really hard to scrape this report off the internet, so I am going to go ahead and leave a link to it below. It's a dense investment thesis, but also genuinely very scary. Now, of course, there is still one way that you matter in the economy, and this report covered that as well. Whilst the rich are getting a greater share of the wealth and the poor a lesser share, political enfranchisement remains as was: one person, one vote. In plain English, the biggest risk to their clients was that votes were somewhat evenly distributed. Fortunately for them, we are really bad at spending them wisely. Go and watch this video next to see just the latest example of people clearly voting against their own best interests, and don't forget to like and subscribe to keep on learning how money works.
Fuck yeah. Acolytes, show this man love. This is actually quite interesting for me specifically, I mean, for other people too. And this guy is just reading into things, and right now I can say that his analysis is all, or by now, only some point. Because after I watch his video, wait, what is this? What the fuck, they changed it, irrelevant. This video is, or his videos, after I research it for myself, are pretty on point, so if you want to look something up like this, watch his videos. To I agree. So, as it is, acolytes, good night.